Welcome back to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. Today, I have one of the most sought after people at Hawksoft, the Director of Partner Integrations, Mr. Kenny Hendricks. Kenny has worked his way up from a customer service rep in 2015 to marketing coordinator to business development coordinator to his current role of Director of Partner Integrations. Kenny, welcome to the show.
It is a real honor to be here. Brad, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I am. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better. It's been good just kind of talking to you a little bit off air. So I know this is going to be a great conversation. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you made it to Hawksoft and how you worked your way up the ladder?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that I am an oddity at Hawksoft, and the percentage on this is getting a little skewed as we grow as a company, but I'm an oddity because I don't have an insurance background. I was an English as a secondary language teacher. I was teaching English in Japan. And before that was my job immediately before Hawksoft. It's a bit of a longer story. I won't eat up a lot of your time, but the big jumps are I worked in language education at a university, and I worked in a cutting edge language lab. It's not often kind of observed when you're taking your like Spanish 101 or your French 200 or whatnot, but language faculty tend to be on the cutting edge of technology in a classroom. They tend to be younger. They tend to not be language educators by design. They're usually like they are film professors, or they have some special interest that involves the language that they teach, and then to get a teaching position, they have to teach the language. So they're very experimental. And I went from using really cutting edge smart boards and virtual classrooms and a lot of fun software to teaching English on a chalkboard in rural Japan. And it was whiplash. And while I really loved my time there, I didn't enjoy working in that field.
Okay.
And so I just
How long
started
were
looking.
you in Japan?
I was in Japan for 2 years.
Okay.
My degree is in Japanese studies. And it's kind of one of the few jobs. If you don't do graduate school, which who can afford at this point? If you don't do graduate school, you tend to end up teaching, or you find like some business that it needs a intermediary between the U.S. and Japan or something like that. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. I love education. And that was kind of a nice transition. It was like, okay, I don't need to go get my master's in teaching yet. Let's go see if I like this. I didn't. It's kids are kids everywhere. And often, they don't want to be forced to study something they're not interested in. And so that made it a little rough.
Yeah.
I had a lot of downtime. I had a lot of free time. And I started studying for my A+ and N+ IT certification. They're these kind of standard certifications you can get to be like, I can work in IT, because I love technology. And from there, I just started applying for any open IT or technical support position I could find back home in Oregon, because my wife and I wanted to move back to the Pacific Northwest. Hawksoft was one of 2 companies that was willing to do a video interview of some random guy applying for a position out of the East Coast of Japan or the West Coast of Japan. And so I did a video interview with Hawksoft's old HR director, Todd Boss, who was just like, yeah, we figured you wouldn't want to do this because you were so far away. And I was like, no, I want to do this. So I did a video screen. And then they said, okay, perfect. When you get back, come in for an interview and we'll see if product support would work for you. And so the day I landed back in the US, some 8 years ago, I had my first in-person interview with Hawksoft for a product support rep position. Back then we called it customer support rep, CSR. Still trips me up nowadays. And yeah, they offered me a job. And I was like, cool. I wasn't looking to do phone support, but I loved the interview. Jake Dunbar was on the interview panel. He's our director of product support. And then my old boss Richard was on the panel too. So was Noemi Rodriguez, who's one of our customer success managers now, and just felt great. It was like a really good job interview. It felt awesome. And I actually grew up. Hawksoft is based in a city called Canby, Oregon. I grew up like 20 minutes from there, in another farm town, and it all felt right. But I was younger, and I was like, okay, I got a few other feelers out. I have this other company that was willing to interview for me. I'm gonna go check that out. That interview sucked. And, like, it just didn't feel friendly. The guy made me feel so nervous, and you could tell that he was like looking for someone who was that he could have like just go do menial tasks and maybe get some IT background experience. And honestly, Hawksoft's job offer was extremely generous for product support, and it just felt right. So that's how I started at Hawksoft.
Do you recall at that time, 2015, roughly how many product support people they had?
Oh, I want to say there were 3 teams, and each team had 5 to 7 people on it.
Okay.
So we were probably around 20, because if you count the managers, in my head right now, I'm counting the desks, and like, because we were, when we worked in the office, we were all in a row, but I would say it was probably about 20, and we were growing. I was hired as part of an expansion of Hawksoft when we had a pretty sizable opportunity coming our way, with some carriers going from captive to independent. And so I was part of that expansion. I was hired with a group of 4 other product support reps. And I also started the exact same day that Rashang Shah, our chief marketing officer, started. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And that's how we kind of started to get to know each other, as we went through orientation together.
Okay. So then, so you were there for roughly 10 months, and then you, right? I mean that, and then you moved into your next position. Was it marketing? What was your next position?
So Rashang was just on your show a while back, and I believe you guys talked about how he was the first marketing hire at Hawksoft in 20 years. So Hawksoft existed for 20 years without a marketing department, and then got to a stage where needed some more attention and focused effort on that front. And so Rashang joined the company. We started the same day, and as he got his feet under him and started understanding what was needed, he realized that the team had to grow. And so he went through a pretty long evaluation process of doing outside hire interviews, inside hire interviews. He is very methodical in how he hires people, which I've come to appreciate.
Yeah.
And I was extremely fortunate that my experience at the university had given me some marketing skills that I could bring to this. And one of the things that we were looking for was being able to market to our existing customers. And so a high degree of product knowledge was useful in that. Working together, we decided that my focus would be on what we would call like product marketing, where it's to our existing customers, writing the what's new splash page, writing emails that go out about new features, working with product and the education team to get that message out about new things. And then Rashang continued to focus on assisting the sales team and building out that side of our marketing process. But yeah, that's I often call our marketing department the kind of island of misfit toys, because while a core group focuses on marketing and does amazing work that I'm jealous of every day, marketing at Hawksoft also encapsulates my role, partner integrations, our carrier relations folks, and our network relation folks. So we're not strictly marketers, but it falls under Rashang's domain.
Yeah. So let's fast forward to your current role.
Totally.
Tell us what you do and what your responsibilities are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am now director of partner integrations for Hawksoft, and this role came out of a need for us and a realization that we wanted to be a very connection, integration driven platform. And I had good relationships with a lot of our partners, a good understanding of where we were going with our initial APIs. And so I grew into this position. What I do,
Was there a position before you, or
no.
okay?
So yes and no. You could say that most positions at Hawksoft at one point or another were Paul Hawkins'
Yeah,
position.
right.
So so Paul was and still is central to the partnership effort at Hawksoft, vetting opportunities, working with other companies, asking me to vet and work with other companies. And so in part of his effort um, to just kind of bring other people into the conversations, I kind of took over some of those responsibilities. I always describe myself as kind of his forward scout for partnerships, and it wasn't a role that we needed a lot of until we started to make really significant progress on our Hawksoft Cloud and Hawksoft 6 initiative. And so
Mm,
that's when we introduced our partner API,
okay.
and then we needed someone to oversee partners integrating with us.
Yeah.
And my responsibilities with that are kind of doing that vetting, working with partners so that they can understand what we can and can't do, what our
Yeah.
program is and isn't about, how it all works. And then up until recently, I also helped kind of guide them through onboarding our API. We don't do any of the dev work for them, but we'll provide assistance and guidance on how to use our API.
Okay. So it's somewhere along the line, Hawksoft develops this management systems and then kind of figures out, oh, we need other products
Yeah.
to enhance this program, enhance the experience for the agency force.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about, as I mentioned before, I am not terribly familiar with an API period
Sure.
and how it works. So can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and what I'll say is Hawksoft connecting with third parties has existed almost since the dawn of our
Okay.
system.
Okay.
Um, and we had what we would call back then, what we started to call the legacy API to connect to things. But then it becomes a matter of like your question, like what does this all mean? Do systems just like click together like Legos, or is there more to it? There is more to it, and I often lean on an analogy, and this is not mine. I got it from a great blog on Upwork, where an API is like an ATM, where let's say I'm the bank and Brad, you're a client of our bank, and you have a bank card. Your bank card, you put it into the ATM, you enter in your PIN, and then you select what you want to do. You tell the ATM like, "Hey, give me, I need to withdraw $20," and so the ATM says, "Okay, I'm going to talk to the bank. I'm going to confirm that you have those $20, and then I'm going to give you the cash." And so an API, an application program interface, is a way for two separate systems to talk to each other. I also like to borrow this analogy from Michael Liebor, who's the co-founder of Insurance Gig. He always talks about the United Nations, and the United Nations, a gathering of all representatives of all countries in the world. They come together to have conversations to discuss really important topics, and they don't all speak the same language. A lot of them speak French, but we won't get into why. And so, in the background, there is there's just a bank of translators that
Yeah.
if
Yes.
I'm talking in English and the delegation from Korea is listening, the translator in their ear is talking to them in Korean. And so an API is very similar. It is a way for two systems that probably speak different languages to talk to each other.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. And so from Hawksoft's side, it's how does our management system and the data that an agency creates and cultivates, how does that data speak with the additional systems that help their agency run?
Yeah. So I would imagine there are quite a few tech companies that want to partner with Hawksoft,
Mm-hmm.
and there's probably a lot of pressure from maybe a lot in the agency force that say, hey, why don't you use this software? So what does Hawksoft look for in a partner,
Yeah,
and what maybe do you look out for?
absolutely. And this is where we try our best to be a neutral um, hub in the middle. Part of our realization and the reason why we've embraced the partnership model so much is that we came to terms with the fact that we will not be the be all end all for every agency.
Yep.
And in fact, we don't think we should be. We have
Right.
our core competency, and then there are companies that focus on things we don't, that will always do those things better than we could. Um, so I'll tell you, the first and foremost thing I look for is an existing Hawksoft customer. And so the first question I ask any incoming opportunity that comes our way is, do you have any existing Hawksoft agencies that I can talk to?
Mhm.
The reason for that is uh, time. Time is a finite resource, and we want to prioritize impact to agencies. And when a partner is being used by just one or more agencies, that means their impact will be a little bit bigger initially than maybe a startup coming to us and saying, we don't have any customers yet, we definitely don't have
Mhm.
any on Hawksoft, can we work with you? We will say yes to those opportunities. We've said yes to plenty of those opportunities, but in terms of like prioritizing time and resources, we're going to focus on ones with existing customers. The next thing we kind of look for is a gut check. And I imagine, from your experience talking with other folks at Hawksoft and, other agencies that gather around Hawksoft, we are a squishy, touchy feely company,
Yeah.
and in the best way.
Yeah.
And so I'll say that, like, step one, I always call it, is a phone call. I'll spend a half hour, an hour talking to the people behind the company before we even talk uh, technology, APIs, NDAs, terms, all that fun stuff. We start with like a conversation like, what do you do for agencies? What's the story of your company? How did it get started? Where did you come from? All these things, where we just try and get a gut impression of who they are. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. Very rarely have we said no. Very rarely have we started from a position of no. Sometimes things just don't feel right. Occasionally we've been approached by opportunities that are just like, this kind of feels like you want to just use us to get to carry your downloads and you don't really care
Mhm.
about anything else, or um, boy, this really feels like you're a digital direct writer, and that kind of feels weird. Um, but that's like step two. It's the step one. Does anybody, any of your customers currently use Hawksoft? Step two, do you pass this gut check? Paul Hawkins did and does a lot of things by, a handshake and understanding like the quality of someone's character. He always says that his best gift is being able to understand people. And that's something we try to replicate. It's hard to kind
Yeah.
of scale that, but at the same time, it keeps us honest to our core values and just being like, oh, okay, we feel like this person can be trusted or this organization can be trusted. Um, but then we will always prioritize an agency input over our own input, because we might struggle doing business with a partner, but if they're doing good work for an agency, we will get over that. We will put it behind us and move forward.
So what does the process look like, when you're working with a partner like that? And
Hmm.
I use Agency Zoom as a
Sure.
CRM, so I'll just use them.
Yeah.
So what does that look like granting access, granting access to Agency Zoom? Is it almost like a negotiation of, well, we can allow you into this bucket, but no,
Yeah.
this bucket's off limits? I mean, does it
Uh,
work like that, or what does that look like?
That's a great question. So today, Hawksoft doesn't scope data access like that. And a data scope is a technical term to say like the bucket of data. We Because of the data available in our API, it's very focused on clients and policies. We don't have limitations on, like, once someone's in it and using it, as long as the agency says you can access my data, there isn't any limitation like that in place
Okay.
today. The process, and Agency Zoom is a great example. I'm a big fan of Mo Latif. We work together a lot. I will always hold their extreme level of communication and transparency through the acquisition by Vertafore as like kind of the gold standard of how to handle that. I thought that was really well done on their side. So I have a great working relationship with Agency Zoom. So they're a great example. Jump back a few years ago, prior to their acquisition, they reached out and said, "Hey, we know you have this API. We would love to use it. Can we do that?" And it's like, "Okay, awesome. I know you from back in my support days, even. Good company, good standing. A lot of agencies love you. We get a non-disclosure agreement in place. It's like standard practice in business these days. And then we share with them our API documentation that they can evaluate. We try to take it very methodically. We don't reinvent the process for every partner. And we don't do that because today we have about 20, 21 live API partners, another 10 plus solution partners, and then I have an ecosystem document that tracks everyone else, and it just crossed over into the 200s of the number of different technology companies out there that would like to work with Hawksoft or work with our customers. And so we tried to streamline the process, and that's kind of, we take everybody through it. NDA, share documentation with them, answer questions. Then we set them up in a test environment where they can test with the data. They test with fake data. Every partner goes through a pilot, and a pilot. We do this with software where you say like, oh, okay, it's not done yet, but we need real agencies to test it. And so we spend at least 2 weeks, often more, pilot testing a new integration. And so we'll make sure everything's working properly, make sure that the partner is responsive to agency feedback. And then once that's done, then we'll talk about releasing it and launching it. Hawksoft has a platform called Marketplace. The name kind of suggests our original idea, which was that you'd be able to kind of shop for integrations on it. We took the shopping piece out of it. So it might be better to call it like integration settings at this point. But inside Marketplace, an agency has the ability to say, I do business with this company and I would like to share my data.
Okay.
And that's very important to us because one of the things that we never want to do is make a decision for an agency about what they're allowed to do with their data. That is a very core piece of how Hawksoft views our responsibility to agencies. And so Marketplace gives you the ability to say, I want to share my data with Agency Zoom. It also gives you the ability, if anything's going awry, to turn it off. And that's also important to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I correct in saying that it seems like even though it's a two-way integration, it seems like there's still more information that's allowed to go out than there is to come in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Our read capabilities far outstretch our write capabilities. And this is kind of, it hinges on the work we're doing with Hawksoft 6. And I don't want to cover a lot of the same ground that Sean and Rajang covered when they were on the podcast, but kind of the high level overview is we're going from being a server-based piece of software to a cloud-based piece of software. And the data behind it was one of the first things we started to move. We introduced Hawksoft Cloud about 3 years ago, and that's what opened up our ability to do these integrations. And it started as a read-only API, and very comprehensive view into a policy and a client, but no write back functionality, no ability to change a policy status or a line of business, add a vehicle, those types of things. At the beginning of last year, we introduced write back functionality, and we antagonized a lot over how to do it, because it is the ambition of our Hawksoft 6 project that Hawksoft as a platform will be entirely API driven, and therefore over time most functionality should have the ability for a third party to interact with it. But we knew it was going to take time to do Hawksoft 6, and we wanted, at the very least, documentation back in the system. So we said, okay, what is the middle ground? What can we accomplish without derailing Hawksoft 6? And we came up with our log API. And so Hawksoft, one of the central things that it does is it automatically documents any action you take on behalf of a client or a policy with our action menu. And so we gave our third-party API partners the ability to trigger and interact with that action menu and create that documentation via the API. And you can add attachments, you can add tasks to the system, but it stops short of creating a client, editing a piece of information. And our reasoning behind that is twofold. First and foremost, not really possible in Hawksoft 5 because of how data is stored. It would be very system intensive to retrieve a field, open it, decrypt it, write to it, encrypt it, put it back on the server. Not really possible. And second, we need to figure out how to give an agency authority in that process, because we don't want a third-party system to go rogue and mess with data that an agent doesn't want interacted with. And so we have to put those fail safes and kind of toggles in place before we do that.
Yeah. What are some of the most common requests that you get from the agency force?
Digital payments, digital payments, and digital payments.
Digital
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's so there are two avenues that are not well connected within our ecosystem. Financial services, and so we hear a lot about digital payments, digital invoices, and premium finance. Those are big in that area, and then VoIP systems. We have API integration with a prominent phone system provider, and we also have, likely by the time that this is released, the most popular phone system provider in the independent insurance space will likely have two-way API integration with us live, and they'll be the first.
So what would that feature do? A two-way integration with the phone system.
Absolutely. And so what people want is, they don't want to have to import their Rolodex. They want that to be automatic.
Yeah.
So they just want the phone system know who my clients are. And then really importantly, they want the phone system to just document calls back in Hawksoft. And so I'm not going to name them because it's pending release. It's highly likely, and definitely by the time this is out, I'll make sure I'll comment on when this posts out who they were. But they are going to automatically write back to the client file a phone call with a link to the recording, text message conversations, those types of interactions automatically documented back. Because, I often look for in integrations, we've solved for saving you hours of time. And by and large, we've solved for saving you minutes. It's all about shaving seconds off your day at this point, I feel like, in technology. And even if it's as simple as copy and paste into a log note, you shouldn't have to do that. So what we're doing is what this partner is doing and has done really well is, you have a phone conversation with someone. Once you hang up, they send it to Hawksoft. You don't have to worry about documenting it. And that saves you seconds. It'll add up to minutes and hours over time.
not only the time saving, all the other benefits that has, doing
Hmm.
it by itself is just massive for us.
Yeah.
It's just massive. What do you feel are some of the features that are the most useful integrations that you've
Sure.
seen?
And I'll preface this by saying that I think everyone we integrate with to the right agency is extremely useful.
Yeah,
Um, and if you're okay with it, I'll take you through my normal question, and then
let's do it.
that'll give me a
Yeah,
good way to talk to you about things.
yeah,
Um, so let's say often I get asked about marketing automation all the time, and so the question I ask back to agencies is, right now, what is your strategy for growth? Are you focused on referral based, slower growth, or do you use maybe lead or new sales driven aggressive growth?
we use both.
Hmm.
Um, right now, because of the market, I mean, like many agencies, our number one referral source was a loan officer, real estate,
Sure.
financial advisor referral source. So we still have that because of the market that's slowed quite a bit. So
Hmm.
we do have active leads we use we receive a lot of leads from Google Ads
Okay.
that we have a lot of stuff taped together through our CRM and through our
Yeah.
other automations. So that's our primary lead source right now.
Gotcha. So then generally what I would say based on that, and I definitely trust that you have probably a strong process for referrals and retention. But with those leads coming in, let's say you want to focus on a more sales oriented
Yes.
system, something that can help you with that more aggressive approach. And neither approach is invalid.
Mhm.
It's the decision that I think is the really important thing. So I would say, and I know you use them, so this isn't probably the best example, but I'd be like, agency Zoom is one of the kind of what I hear agencies say is often really good for them in new sales, and the ability to kind of process and automate your sales pipeline. I think that their ability to take a lead from Hawksoft and import it into their system and then run it through the sales process is a very useful feature. Um, Also in that arena would be a company like InsuredMine that
Yeah.
has some really strong sales focused
Yes.
capabilities. And they do something similar where they can take data from Hawksoft and take it through the sales process. They also have the capacity at a certain point in your process, you can export that back to Hawksoft. So if you're starting your leads over in their system, you can export them back to Hawksoft using an older tool, but it still works really well. So that's kind of how I engage those conversations, that little simulation where I think all of our partners are very useful. I I'm a big fan of anything that reaches through to the insured is really important to
Yeah.
me. And I think we have some great partners in the mobile app space that do that very well. That I think it's very, very useful to an agency to have that um, kind of their agency in the pocket of their insureds. Um, One that maybe isn't doesn't get talked about a lot. I'm pretty sure they're live. Um,
Ins- is it Insurance Gig? Because I think that you just recently posted about them, and I'm really interested to hear how that
oh, totally.
process
Um,
works.
I was looking for. I like. Um, Yes, we can talk insurance gig, and then I want
Yeah.
to come back to like value adds.
Yeah.
And so I like insurance gig a lot. Insurance gig is a platform for connecting different services together.
Yeah.
I think the kind of reductive way to explain them is they're Zapier for insurance.
Mm.
Zapier is a whole other topic that we could talk about too,
Yeah.
but insurance gig they're the intermediary, and we use them heavily in the financial services area. We talked about earlier, our API is not designed for financial services.
Yeah.
um, we just don't it the API doesn't include invoices or commissions or whatnot. So it doesn't work very well for those. But there are things where we can kind of bridge the gap, and working very closely and collaboratively with the Insurance Gig team, we developed they did the work, they deserve all the credit. They developed this tool called PremFi, which is a comparative rater for premium finance. And it allows you to, if you're doing a lot of premium finance, or even if you're not accustomed to that world, but occasionally you have to write a complex commercial policy, and you show that premium to your insured, and they're just like, whoa, that's way more than my car. And so what PremFi does is it gets data from Hawksoft to pre-fill the necessary information for the different premium finance systems. And Insurance Gig goes out, gets those quotes, and then can provide you with the proposal document, or you can move on to bind inside their system, or you can document it back in Hawksoft. It's very cool. And that's one of those things where they're like solving these edge cases for us that we don't have the headspace for, that we like a lot.
I think I cut you off. You were searching for one of the other features.
I was looking for a partner, and they recently pivoted.
Okay.
So this might not be their focus anymore, but this is one of those startups that didn't come to us with Hawksoft customers, but the idea was so great that we were like, yeah, let's figure this out. They're a company called Gaia. Sometimes you see them as Gaia Fee. They recently pivoted to AI stuff, and so this might be slightly outside of their product offering at this point, but they would do they would help you provide a better finance option for a new car. So let's say one of your insurers calls you up. I just bought a brand new car. I bought a used new car, new to me, and let's say I did that, and I called you up, and I'm like, hey, Brad, I just, I got rid of my Versa. I finally upgraded to a grown-up car. I got a Subaru. Can you help me move the policy, get a better quote on this? And then you as an agent can say like, oh, hey, what rate did they give you on that auto loan? And then Gaia would help you source a better rate. It was grown out of a Stanford Business School. Two students were trying to address kind of inequality in the car finance world, where they just their families could not get good auto loans, and so they built a tool where they could get better ones. And they were like, well, how do we deploy this to the market? Well, it's like, okay, let's go through agencies who are servicing these auto policies. Two other good examples that I like a lot, and especially in this market. So we've been talking a lot about API partners, and I am director of partner integrations, but I also oversee our solution partner program, which is non-integrated companies that do something to address a pain point an agency has. And so we have really cool partners like Back9. They are a life insurance quoting platform. And depending on what service you sign up for, they can be your licensed life insurance agent. And so as like an account rounding value add, you can use their system, get a quote connected. You can flood info to it via actually Insurance Gig or HawkLink, depending on how you're doing it. And then you can just quickly provide life insurance to your clients. And then they provide you with the commission percentage. And there's a similar company, but for Medicare, Medicaid, called CoverRight, that we just launched as a solution partner, that does that and helps you engage those conversations with Medicare and Medicaid for your clientele, or as they put it, like probably your clients' parents. Like you can help your clients help them, because that's actually the genesis of that company. They were helping each other's parents navigate Medicare and Medicaid and realized that it was kind of a mess. I love all of our partners, and I always get super excited because it's like, Hawksoft, we work with so many great agencies, and they all do business a unique way. And our partners fit into those puzzles really well, where it's like, someone might come to us and say, I do not care about marketing automation, but I would kill to find a good life insurance agent and be like, I can solve that problem. Or I've been I spend all my time in Excel and I really want to just get better data insights without putting in all that effort. And we can say like, oh, have you talked to the guys at Donna, Arias Analytics, do that business intelligence stuff? It's like really exciting for me. And I always say if I have a bad day, I just try and call an agent and talk to them about their problems so I can help them out. It always makes me feel better.
Yeah, that's good to know. Talk a little bit about Neon and their connection with Hawksoft and what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Neon is a great example of industry relationships, collaboration, somewhat reaching across the aisle would be a really good way to put it. Because I think they would even admit that some of their early aspirations were more targeted on the management system world.
Oh yeah.
And so for Hawksoft, that's the one red line I have is Hawksoft doesn't do direct integrations to a competitive management system.
Wow, right.
Yeah, and so initial conversations with Seth and his team at Be Atomic were like, we love what you're doing, but this is a somewhat of a non-starter for us.
Yeah.
But over the evolution of their product, Seth kept checking in. And for listeners, your listeners are definitely going to be informed. But for my mom, who's probably listening to this because I shared it on LinkedIn, Seth Zaremba is a great agent, had a great agency, developed a great product, Neon, for doing analytics and process improvements, a lot of great stuff. And so Seth reached out and said, hey, well, I know we talked before. Our situation has changed. I want to work with you, make sure Hawksoft is comfortable with integration and find a path forward. And so spent a lot of time talking with Seth, talking with Pat, and figuring out, okay, first and foremost, are you guys a management system? No. Cool. Clarify that. Got that off the table. So that frees open all of my resources to work with them.
Yeah.
We started as solution partners while they got to the point in their roadmap where they could start developing integration. And we are actively we've completed a pilot. They've spoken somewhat freely about this. So this is one of those situations where we're like, normally there's an NDA. I couldn't talk about this, but Seth has been talking about this. So I feel like we're okay talking about this. But and likely by the time this episode is released, it probably will be out anyway. But they're able to consume data from Hawksoft and analyze it for process improvements. They're learning better and better how to read our log notes so that they can say like, oh, you're spending this much time doing this activity. You're spending this much time working with this carrier. I love working with technology that comes out of the agency space. We're very fortunate to be in an industry that doesn't get a lot of flyover tech startups that are like, I had a policy once, I could solve this. A lot of it comes out of like, I've run an agency for 20 years.
Yeah.
This was a pain point. I'm trying to solve it.
Right.
And so it's exciting in that regard to work with the team at Neon and Be Atomic. We have a lot of mutual customers, a lot of people advising them that I respect. And I'm excited to roll it out more. We're always navigating the Hawksoft isn't a big hype company. And so it's always a balance between getting the news out appropriately and then also like generating excitement about it. And so that's kind of our balancing act a little.
You know what works well with that is I agree with you. Hawksoft isn't a big hype company, but your support, your agency force, and they are the hype for Hawksoft.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even before I had Hawksoft, when I was doing my research and talked to people, I couldn't believe how passionate people were about Hawksoft. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm with this company I can't stand. I can't wait to drop them. I'm happy to pay $3,000 to get out of my contract with these people. But Hawksoft, there were people seriously like Hawksoft's the only option you're a fool if you don't use them. I mean, people are that serious about them. So it's so impactful. And it speaks to the genuineness of the company, the sincerity, the culture. Yeah. So and here I am kind of hyping up the company myself. So thank you for that. Let's want to touch base a little bit on Hawksoft 6.
Sure.
And how that enhances the integration and workflows.
Absolutely.
Going forward. Yeah.
Hawksoft 6 is going to be just an entire sea change for our integrations effort. And I can hear every partner reaching for their keyboard right now to send me an email being like, what do you mean? But what I mean is it has been the design of our system architect, Matt Amon, to have a completely API-driven insurance platform in Hawksoft 6. And so it's going to be slow work, but the end result that we're going for is we want Hawksoft out of the box to meet the table stakes for an agency. If you're just starting out, you're a really effective producer that has decided to go hang your own shingle somewhere and you need to start your agency, Hawksoft should have everything out of the box that you need. And then as you grow as an agency and you need more specialized tools, we want a platform that you will be able to hot swap in what is relevant and necessary to you to be successful. And so the hypothetical of this would be something like reporting. So Hawksoft, we believe very strongly in having a really robust reporting engine. But if you're an agency that really loves to go deep in the weeds or really wants some AI-based insight, we want you to be able to kind of swap in, okay, I'm going to use Adana or I'm going to use Neon, Agency KPI, any of these others that are out there that specialize in this. We want you to be able to kind of swap them in seamlessly. Or, Hawksoft, you can send emails out, you can send text messages, but if you want automated text messages, maybe you can hot swap something in. And so that's what we're aiming at. It's going to take time. We have to get agencies on 6 first, but we are just about ready to roll out documentation on what we're calling the V2.0 API. And that's the foundation. It's a key piece of Hawksoft 6. It introduces our API to that system. And it's going to be pretty awesome. It's not, we've warned a lot of our partners, your API calls are all going to work. Like we're not doing any code breaking changes. Hawksoft has been on the receiving end of code breaking changes and it sucks. Like it absolutely sucks. So we're not perpetuating that type of development action. We are being very deliberate about it, which will be a little slower, but our end goal is we want Hawksoft, first and foremost, will consume our own APIs to do everything. And then we'll let agencies in on it. If they want to modify and change some stuff, we'll let them in. And then third parties being able to interact with hopefully every level of the management system.
Yeah. So it's going to make us, well, first of all, you mentioned the reporting.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be like 5 times quicker, right? I mean,
so it's funny. So we're recording this at the beginning of a month. And after I do this, I'm going to go run my regular monthly reports. Reporting in Hawksoft 6 is amazing.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I'm going to do it in a web browser. And I'm not even going to log into Hawksoft. And the report I run, which is an entire database report on Hawksoft, is going to take maybe 5 seconds. The team that did reporting in Hawksoft 6 has my undying admiration. Coming from product support inside Hawksoft, we use our report system all the time. And then going into marketing, I was running reports to send batch emails and whatnot. I live in advanced reports inside Hawksoft. So I was like super hesitant with Hawksoft 6 and the changes they were making. But the second I got over the learning curve, which is there, but the moment it clicked in my head, I was like, oh, I can run the same report instantly that it would have taken minutes. My joke is that it was always my coffee break. Like I would start a report and I would go make coffee. I would
Yeah.
grind the
Right.
beans and
Hopefully
run
it's
the
done. Yeah.
machine. Yeah. Now I do not have that luxury anymore.
What do you see? Maybe you can speak to this. Maybe you can't. Over the say a year from now, hopefully all this is Hawksoft 6 is up and running.
Yeah.
And what do you see potentially as some features that will be game changers for us? I mean, and I say that, I mean, what my hope is as an agent is to avoid duplication,
Yeah.
to limit the amount of clicks to get
Mm-hmm.
from A to B. What are the features coming that will enhance our experience? Or maybe you can't speak to it just yet. It's hard to say. Yeah.
I
Put
made
me
a
on the
joke to
spot
you
here.
when I sent you an email. I said, my last name starts with H, but it has
Yeah.
none of the right letters
That's
after it.
right. Fair. Fair.
So there's stuff that I would
Yeah.
absolutely love to talk about. But part of the way we operate is that if you can't use it the second you turn off this recording, we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. I get it.
Because like we don't twice bitten, one of those things where
Yeah.
it just struggles. What I can say is philosophically where we're going. And we want to do a few things. We want to streamline an agency's ability to be consistent. Paul Hawkins has been leading the charge on the concept around task center, workflow automation. That is something very important to us and will be a component of Hawksoft 6. The ability for an agency to define how they do a common practice and make sure that their staff are always doing it that way. I think that'll be really a game changer in hiring new business or hiring new talent to work inside the agency, lowering E&O exposure, making it easier to onboard with a VA as well, because you'll be able to give them consistent workflows. I think that accounting is amazing in Hawksoft 6. I'm extremely biased. One of my best friends at Hawksoft, probably my best friend at Hawksoft, is Ken Scheel. He's a product owner, and he, working along with Brittany Blanco, we're the product owners for accounting, and they've done amazing work in trimming all of the fat from our accounting system and making it a streamlined process. Where I see really revolutionary stuff happening is in the automation and API exposure into that process. I see a future with Hawksoft where digital invoices, digital payments, digital payment processing is all API driven. I can't speak to concrete things about that, but I've been party to some very promising conversations that I would not have expected to hear 6 months ago, but we have been making so much amazing progress that there's some really amazing stuff in that arena.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm a bit like the hologram in iRobot, and I use this joke a lot, so anybody I've talked to probably knows this one, but like my answers are limited. Please ask the right questions in regards to features that are coming out. Too many people. I made the mistake. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I live near the Willamette River that cuts through Portland, and we did a company retreat once on this thing called the Portland Spirit, which is a big ship that goes up and down the Willamette, and you can have dinner on it. I made the mistake once of pointing out to the dev team, like, "Oh, that's my apartment building." So I can't speak so freely. They will know where to find me.
All right. Put you on the spot again.
Sure.
Tell me the 3 biggest agent thorns in your side that are constantly trying to get information out of you.
Like agencies that put me for information?
I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
The thing that I love about working with agents, though, is like it never comes from a place of like maliciousness. Like no one ever is like, "Hey, give me some tips so I can go put money in my applied stock? Like, is it going to go up? Or is it going to go down? And I'm using that as an example. I don't even know if applied is publicly traded or not, but it's always like, man, if I could do this thing in my agency, maybe I'd be able to hire another CSR, or I just want to spend more time with my kids, but I spend an hour, doing this function every day. And so like those things, I'm always like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's work through that. There are very few agency, like there's almost no agent that I would not spend an hour with. I had a teacher in like third grade that told me that patience is a virtue. She was trying to tell me to like stop complaining about group work, but the message really sunk in. And so it's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, I will.
Yeah.
I might go like have to go for like an hour long power walk, listen to some death metal afterwards, but I will sit and talk to you. That's all you need. Because like at the end of the day, I think that it's such a great industry. It's such a great purpose that none of those conversations are ever too bad.
Yeah.
And thankfully most people understand when I'm like, I can't talk about that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's hard because we want so many things and don't understand. To use your reference earlier about, isn't it just connecting a couple Legos and they should work and be able to communicate? And we don't, most of us, some of us really do. I mean, there's so many sharp, innovative people in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
It just blows my mind. But a lot of us don't know how it's connected. And we just think, well, what do you mean? My iPhone can do it. I don't understand why this doesn't work. So it's just not that easy. So yeah, I know that I know you take a lot of a lot of heat. So, and I know that you handle it well. So I appreciate that. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up.
Sure.
Kept you definitely over time today, but I really enjoyed our conversation. I learned a lot, and yeah, thanks for taking the time. I greatly appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. I think these are important conversations to have, and it is an absolute honor, I feel, to be able to participate in these conversations. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Everyone else, thank you for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. We'll see you next week.